He's gonna be the first, huh?
First out the door. Well, he's gonna take a look at the draft permit first, see if he has any. No, that was a different facility.
Oh, okay.
That was another one.
Susan is here now, we can start.
No pressure.
Yes,
There you go.
catch your breath.
I'm sorry.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our special Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee meeting. I'm Lakitosopoulos, and this meeting is going to be an encore presentation on our gas station online permitting tool that we developed in popular demand from both the West Bay and what was it? CF and CFCA, request.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
That's perfectly fine. Before we dive into the presentation, I have a few housekeeping things that announcements that I have to go through. I'm going to ask you to put your phones on the silent or vibrate mode so that we are not interrupting the discussion. The restrooms are out of this door to your right, and in the event of an emergency, we may need to shelter in place or evacuate the building. In the event of an evacuation, we're going to go straight out of this building through this door. And if a shelter in place is necessary, we're going to duck and try to protect ourselves underneath the table or whatever else you can find to protect your head.
Will we be served lunch if we have to evacuate?
Priorities, for certain of us, right? So, this is with the gas station one, right? Yes. So with that, perhaps we can go around quickly, with the self-introductions. And I know there are people following from the webcast. Obviously, they cannot ask any questions or chime into the discussion, but at least those of us who are in the room, perhaps we can start. Lakitosopoulos, Deputy Executive Officer with Engineering and Permitting of the agency.
Amir Dejavash, I'm Assistant Deputy Executive Officer from Engineering and Permitting.
David Rothbart, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts.
I'm Bridget McKeon, Manager of Technical and Regulatory Affairs for WISPA.
Ryan Stromar, Senior Admin with Engineering Permitting at SCAQMD.
All right, Production Support, Information Management.
I'm Saad Karam. I'm with Information Management, System Programming Supervisor.
I'm Wan Yu, Assistant Analyst. I work in Information Management Division.
I'm Ron Moskowitz. I'm the Chief Information Officer.
Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance.
Bill Pierce, the Boeing Company.
Susan Stark, Marathon and Speedway Retail.
Francis Bueller with Quadrica.
Stephanie Ferguson with Sioma CFCA.
David Hack, Engineering and Permitting.
David Ono, Engineering and Permitting.
William Thompson, Engineering and Permitting.
Janice West, Engineering, Permitting, Streamlining.
Merrill Hickman, Engineering and Permitting.
Very good. Welcome to you all. As you all know, for the last couple of years, we've been investing serious resources and attention to modernize, automate our permitting system, our permitting process to the extent we can. So we started with with the simpler equipment, such as automotive spray booths, dry cleaners, and developed online tools where you can go online, download, and insert the information that you need and obtain your permit online if you happen not to be located close to a school. And even if you do, the online tool gives you the opportunity to insert all the information electronically and send it over to us, to the agency electronically, and definitely can speed things up. So the good news is we do have a tool for the gas stations, and I want to give a shout out. You saw several representatives from our information management system, just like us, both of us, working as partners. I think we've done incredible job, to develop this tool that ultimately will help both our applicants as well as us. And one piece of good information with respect to this gas station tool, we have already issued 2 permits online. One was, one had to come back just because it was close to a school, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
2 were issued, 1 came back.
Oh, 2, okay, 1 came back, and so we are processing in-house, but at least it came back electronically.
Right.
Right, very good. So without much ado, we are going to dive right into it, and we're going to have a presentation, and Saad Karan from our information management is going to do the honors for us. And it's going to be an interactive discussion, right? So you're inviting questions.
If that's how you like it, that's what we can do it that way. Usually I'd like to go through the presentation, and I'd like to hold all questions until the end, but if you have any important questions, I'll be happy to answer as we go through, no problem whatsoever.
I think presentation first, questions at the end really works a lot better.
Okay, Billy, thank you.
Thank you, Billy. One thing that I'll let you know is if this, we learned from our past experience with the 2 other tools. So with the deployment of this tool, it's on a limited production, which means we are offering the tool with 100% of our assistance. So if there's any party who is interested in using this tool, we'll commit ourselves, to be there and sit next to them up until, they go through the process and they get their permits, or the permits has to be sent back to us if they are, close to a school or something. We have to go through public notice.
So come in.
Come in, yeah, we'll make an appointment. And, we prefer our headquarters, but we are flexible. We'll make the people available also at outside locations. Here we have access not just to our permit engineers, but also to our information management. So geographically, probably the headquarters are more desirable, but
Some time ago, you were talking about maybe putting a kiosk or something out here in the lobby for this.
so we didn't go through the kiosk, but pretty much, we are implementing that idea. We are bringing the computer down, or you can bring your own computer if you want to. We are going to go to one of the meeting rooms, and we'll do that.
So, and I just want to address your question because it's a good one, Bill. The kiosk is it's a very good idea, and we're looking into putting potentially kiosks downstairs, not just for permitting, but for other applications as we develop them. So, just want to let you know, that's on the horizon.
It's still in the queue.
It's still in the queue. That's
It's
right.
going to get, and remember, our long-term goal, which is not such a long-term goal, is to switch everything to electronic. Even if we don't have an online tool yet for all the permit equipment and permit processes, we want to bring ourselves away from the paper application submittal process and have everything be submitted to us electronically. So the kiosk idea, again, will come very handy because people will need, to insert things and communicate with us electronically. So that thing, we are working in converting all our paper forms to electronic equivalent forms. We are making good progress. Within the next 6 to 12 months, we are hoping we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Once we take those forms through some initial testing and we verify that everything works okay, we should be able to get the ball rolling with the electronic transition to the electronic submittal process. So we are excited, obviously, from that vantage point. We are trying to catch up with the 21st century. But we'll talk a lot more about this in our future meetings. So let's get back to Saad, which is the one and only topic in the agenda.
Well, thank you again. Good morning. My name is Saad Karam. I'm with Information Management. And I'm the project manager responsible for the permitting systems at the district. I'd like to again introduce my boss, Ron Moskowitz, our Chief Information Officer. And to my left here, Juan Yu, again, he's the systems analyst who is responsible for the design of the application and knows a lot of details on that included in there. What I'm going to present to you today is the online filing application, online application filing for gas stations, but it includes all other kinds of forms as well that you're probably used to. Those of you who have submitted applications before are familiar with the different forms that are included, from the 400A to the 400PS to everything else that goes with it, as well as the detailed application that goes with for the gas station itself. The way you access the application is from our website. It's not pulling up, is it?
And by the way, get used to the term Olaf. You know, he's not any employee. You know, it's the short for the online application filing system.
And it's not the frozen snowman.
It's
or-
not the frozen snowman.
Come on.
Yes, sir.
Do you have it set on 2 screens?
So the way you access the application is from our website. And when you go to our website, there's a permits section up here. When you click on the permits section, you're going to be taken to a number of items. At the bottom of this page, there's a start the online application process. There's also some other screenshots of the actual application that would be helpful to you guys. If you go through them, you can look at them and go through different. It shows you exactly what we do at screen by screen level. Of course, there's frequently asked questions that you can go through as well. When you click on the start application, you will be asked to log into our district. The application has this login mechanism, and if you've logged in before and you've created a login, you are able to just enter your username and password and get into the application. If you have not, then you will be asked to register, and when you register, you click on the not registered, create an account process in here. What I'm going to do here is, instead of going through the process, I have a small presentation that I can show you as to how this works. When you first, like I said, when you get into the login screen, you're asked to register. If you click on the not registered section, you go on, and this is the screen that will be presented to you to enter the information about your registration process. It's a simple screen. It's got minimal information. You're required to create a username and password, just like any other website that we have. Then you will include your email address. Of course, some personal information, your first name, last name, and phone number, and your address. And when you are in a production mode, this screen comes from our stage site. There is also a CAPTCHA that you're required to enter or click on so that you are able to move on forward. There's also a terms and conditions screen that you click on to agree to all our legalese. This is what the screen would look like when it's filled out. I created an account for myself. And then when you continue on, the next screen that will come up to you is a thank you for registering screen that tells you exactly what you need to do. And one included in it is an email that we have sent you to the email that you've put in on your registration screen. And we need to verify your email and make sure that you are a real person. So you will go to your email, click on the link in that email, and that will take you back to the login screen where you would log in, put in your username and password, and when you click login, it says, hey, thank you for verifying your email. You're in our system. We've accepted you. And that's how you start the process. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. It's not as bad as I expected. As you log in, you will get into the online application filing system, and that's where you start your process. That being said,
So once you register, you are registered for life?
That is correct. You're registered for life, and you can access all of our online application using the same login. So hopefully, as we add more and more applications to this, you can go through the same process and add yourself to this registration process. You'll have to update your registration to say, I want to, access some other application if need be. Currently, we have the online filing application as one of them that is out there. We also have our 1403 asbestos application that you can register for and submit those applications online, as well as those are the only major two right now, and that's where you go through. Okay, now we're going to go to here's where we're going to log in. This is our stage server at this point, and I'm going to log in.
You want to explain why we're using the stage server as opposed to the production server?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously the production server is working okay, and you can go in, but because we're creating almost a real application, but it's not real really, so we just want to make sure to a test database, and we
don't want to create an actual permit.
Yeah.
So that's why we're using this.
Otherwise, lucky, I mean, we would have to.
Yeah.
But that doesn't affect the end user, that's just for you guys.
That's just for us.
Yeah, that's just for the
Internal
demo.
internal,
Yeah.
Got it.
So
I don't
when
want to
you
mess
first
with my
log,
backlog reduction,
One more.
Yeah.
when you first log in, it takes a little bit since it was stable for a while and I was waiting. So
while you're waiting, maybe we can introduce, we have one new addition to the audience. Would you mind identifying yourself and who you were?
I'm Brian Nigger. I'm employed with SC Fuels. And I'm here for the CIOMA.
Okay.
Or the CAP.
So this is the main screen that you get into, and one of the items on the list is online application filing, and that's where you click to get into the application filing. One of the items that I did not show up here is how you add your facility, and you can do one of two things. Obviously, either if you have an existing facility ID, part of the registration process is to add your facility ID, and you can do that very easily. If you don't have one, you can also create a facility online by entering your information, your address, and your facility information that goes with it. So all of that stuff, we have access to it from the application. In order to, if you have obviously this is my test account. I've got a lot of facilities that I was testing with. When you create a new application, you have the option of here, this is where I said you can create a new facility. And if you click on that, you'll be redirected to enter the information about your facility and create that facility for you. Or you can select one that's already existing. And we're going to select this facility at this point. The options that you have to choose from are either to do a dry cleaning application, a spray booth application, or a gas station application. And we're going to do a gasoline station application, a gasoline service station in this case. When you select it, you go continue, and this will enter you into the application. The first screen on the application, as you can see, is an instructions information screen, has lots of information on it. We encourage you to read the instructions. One of the things that I would like to point out, and I'll go through it through the screens as well, is this progress bar that you see up here. This progress bar has three different icons, a blank circle, a half moon circle, and a check mark. This indicates that you haven't. Each section in the screen will have one of those items marked on it. If it is, if the information is complete, you'll see the check mark. If it's half complete, you'll have a half moon check mark here. Or if you haven't started the section yet, it'll be blank like this.
So the half moon means partially complete, not necessarily half complete.
Yeah.
Can you stop anywhere in this process? You've got a customer at your business, so you're
Yes.
gone for 20, 30 minutes or an hour.
Yes, you can stop anytime as you're entering data. As you start entering data, as long as you hit the next, you will be, and I'll show you that as you go through, your next button you will save, or you have a save button in the process as well. So anything that you enter will be saved. Your session is, I think, about 20 minutes. So if you go on 20 minutes without interaction with the screen, you'll have to log back in for security purposes, obviously. And but otherwise, all data is saved for you.
Right, and so once you log back in, you'll be at the same place where you were starting for.
So we click next, and this is where we start the information process. When we're creating a new application, in this case, one of the first things that we do is we'd like to know where your facility is located. And there's instructions at the beginning here that tell you, please tell us where your equipment is located on the property. And so click OK, and you're going to be taken to a map of your facility. And you can zoom in and out and tell us where it is at. We have placed a pin on where we think, based on your address, your equipment is. That may or may not be correct. Hopefully, by looking at this page or this map, you'll be able to tell where it is where your equipment is exactly at. And you can pin it. And you do so by clicking where the pin is, and as it does, it just moves. You can move it here, wherever you think the stack is, where the equipment emissions are mostly at. So, and you do so. Once you're pretty satisfied with that pin, you click Next, and it'll ask you to save. Part of the saving process here is obviously lots of geographical information, data that gets generated, including distances that gets calculated for receptors, whether they're residential receptors or business receptors or anything of the sort, including school receptors if there are some. Now that you're ready, the pin turns green, and you're good to go with the next one. And you click Next. And Bill, this is where we're talking about. You can either save and exit, or if you click Next, the information will be saved, and you move on to the next section of the application. At this point, what I'd like to do is, in order not to kind of bore you a little bit with all of my data entry and my slow data entry, I'm going to go to an application that I've already kind of filled out, so that I don't go through just data entry, and I'll show you the data as we go through screen by screen. So I'm going to go here. Oh, by the way, I want to talk a little bit about this screen, and this is our dashboard. This is a summary of what you will see as far as your application is concerned. Most users will have just one facility associated with their name, and all of this information is information for you. How many applications have you created? How many have payment needed, and so on and so forth? And eventually, how many have you submitted to date? This is just a count of all those applications that you have. So let me go back to my facility. And in this case, I have already started one, and I have one that's awaiting payment. So you'll see them in just a second as we go through the application. The idea is to give you a summary level when you first enter the screen, and you're able to see everything right there in summarized form. There you go. This is for that facility. These are the two applications that we're talking about. So I'm going to click on this application. I'm going to go through the process again that we just talked about. The first screen again that appears is the mapping that tells you where your facility is at. And here again, I've done that before, so everything is saved. I go next. And the next screen has to do with facility business information. And here it tells you, what type of business do you do at your facility? It's a gasoline dispensing facility, obviously. One of the items that were requested is the number of employees and the gross receipts at your facility. This information is required Although you do not necessarily have to provide the numbers, you can put, if you do not want to put the numbers, you're required to put zeros instead. But if you do, then we are able to determine whether you are a small business or not and give you the appropriate discount as far as fees are concerned for small businesses. The next item on the list is, are there any other facilities in the AQMD jurisdiction? If you say yes, these screens open up and your list other facilities that are associated with you as an owner. If not, this closes up and you're good to go. We go next, and the data is saved. The next item is application information, and in this case we have the ability to choose what kind of application are we trying to submit. We have options to submit new construction equipment on site but not constructed, or some alteration modification of your existing permit. We're going to choose new construction in this case, and that will give us the option to create a brand new facility or a brand new permit. Number of items are required out of you is, when do you expect the construction of this permit to start, or this equipment to start? When do you expect it to complete? And when do you expect operation to start? There's a calendar that you can choose from. As you can tell, the calendar shows all of these dates prior to the day as blank because you cannot start construction yesterday. If you do, then you are not really doing a new construction. And so you choose your date. You choose your construction and your estimated end construction, which we said you're going to start in a week and end in January. And then you choose when you start operation on February 1st, we said. So hopefully that's an aggressive schedule, but you never know. I know a lot of people can do that.
So that would be, excuse me, that your permit to construct, so if I understand you correctly, if you're going to start construction, if you have a new business, or you're expanding a business or something, and you have physical construction, you anticipate physical construction going on, that's your stop, and then you have an end date for that. If you have an existing business, and let's say you're taking delivery on a new paint booth, for instance.
Okay.
Do those dates come under the same thing?
If
Start construction and end? In other words, you're not
Mary, you want to
constructing
address that?
Well, at that point, it's a new construction for that spray booth. So again, so that would be the construction date would be when the paint booth is being delivered, and the end of the construction date would be when the booth is ready to operate.
So delivery and construction are synonymous then, really?
In that
particular
In
scenario,
that
yeah.
particular,
Uh-huh.
yeah, okay.
Before you go further, can we go back to the previous page?
Sure.
And it was the last item about,
The number of employees?
no, are there other, yeah. I mean, right now, that's a question on the form, but all it is a question, but if you click yes.
Then we ask you to enter what facility IDs do you have. You can, if you know your facilities, you just enter them one at a time that are under the same jurisdiction. Amir, you want to explain why we need this?
Well, there's two reasons, obviously. One is that, you don't accidentally create an ID for the same exact facility that you may already have. And the second is, for a larger facility, again, this form is going to be used for future purposes. We need to know what other facilities you have and if you're with us, and making sure all your equipment are in compliance with our rules and regulations before we can issue that final.
It's just a very long, I mean.
Yeah,
That's,
so-
And if we have many sites within your jurisdiction, is there a way to do some sort of, a field where it recognizes your name, your entity name, and then we'll drop down everything that's listed under that, or is it an individual field where we're not entering over 100?
We can take that under
Yeah.
advisement.
You have to take a look at it.
because I guess, how is it done now? I mean, I know, like when we file our applications, we check that box.
Then we do it
For that,
manually.
say yes, but I mean, what the district's done with that historically, I've never really
So-
known.
If you, at this point, if you just checked it and then didn't fill that on, you could still continue. So
It's not a mandatory
It's
field.
not a mandatory field to
I see.
put it in. However,
I-
that's,
So I do want to tell you that if you already are in our system, we do have a background check that checks if your facilities are tied up based on your parent ID. If you are, then we list those for you automatically. Okay, so you don't have to fill them if we have that connection already in our system. If not, then you're required to enter those yourself.
So that would be payment of fees or NOVs or something like that?
Not based on NOVs or fees, no, based on just our overall facility information.
Well, and again, this is something that we're building up for future use. So if you're a major source facility and, you know, your facilities are not in compliance with our requirements, then if you have an NOV, yes, at that point, there's a Rec 13 requirement that all of your facilities at South Coast or it has to be in compliance with our rules before we can move forward. So we're just building, this is part of the 400 form that we have developed that it may not consider be very useful for this particular application, but for future use that we're going to be using for our major sources, it will become a lot more applicable and useful.
But those would be two circumstances, maybe more, that would hold up this application.
Right. But we don't expect this part to be a showstopper for this module.
Yeah, for the gas station, right. All right, we're gonna go next, and again, we're done with the new construction. The last section on the screen talks about the notice of violation. If you have received a notice of violation as a result of submitting this application, wanting to submit this application, more than likely, this would be in our system already, and that would have been listed automatically for you here. However, there's sometimes a little bit delay between when the NOV is issued and it makes it our system. You can, if it doesn't show up and you know about it, you can again click yes and enter that NOV right here. Of course, you need to know that if you do have an NOV, the application you will not get a permit online. The application will have to come in-house and evaluated by an engineer to talk about why the NOV was issued and everything else.
Nobody has NOVs here,
Nobody
everybody's
has
complying,
NOVs.
100%.
Of course. We go next, and the next section is some application and some authorization. This is where you enter information about your whether you click whether you wish to review your permit prior to issuance, yes or no. Whether you claim confidentiality of data, yes or no. Of course, responsible official information is required here, including definitely an email. As a registered user as well as a responsible official for this facility will be receiving emails from us. Everything that you get, including all the 400 days eventually, all the paperwork, as well as the permit itself when it gets issued, will be sent to you via email. So make sure that your email is accurate and available to receive that stuff. So I've entered my information, my address, and my email here, and I'm going next. Now, this completes the 400-day screen. Unfortunately, I was hopefully if I was going through a brand new screen, I would have shown you the difference between these. This now shows as a complete and a check mark is done, and then we would move on to the PS form. The PS form now has some information about location data, and you select whether it's your zoning classification, whether it's a mixed-use residential or any other one of these that are available to you. You select your population density, whether it's urban or rural, and you also select or decide whether there is a school within a quarter mile of the boundary of your facility. Again, part of our GIS information processes that we do in the background behind the scene here is to determine whether there is a school within that distance. In this case, we did not find any, and our GIS system is up to date and has all the schools that we know about. Of course, if there's a new school that is just being, coming up or being built right now that you know about that we don't, or that our system's not been updated for that purpose, then you can enter it yourself. And you are required to do so by clicking yes and entering the information the school name, address, and everything else, and how far is it from your facility.
From the facility boundary or that pinpoint for the equipment?
It's from the pinpoint. It's from
Not
way,
the fence line,
not the what?
not the fence line.
Not the
Not
fence
the
line,
fence line.
no, not from the emission source.
It does measure to the fence line of the school, though. So it's the boundary of the school.
Yeah, it's from the emission point to the boundary of the school.
Okay.
So that location of the pinpoint can be very critical, especially if you're a high throughput facility. Because ultimately we use that distance not only to calculate distance to the school, but also calculating risk to the sensitive receptor. So accurate characterization of that and a location of that pinpoint is critical.
All right, if there is no school, we're gonna click next and go on to the next section. In here, the next section of the PS form is our stack data. This is a gas station, so really there is no stack, so I've gone ahead and entered 0 for the stack height and closest building because they're not affected. A rain cap is not applicable, and whether it's, the stack is horizontal or vertical is not applicable as well. Here are the distances that were calculated for you automatically behind the scene. The nearest residential area to this facility is 127 feet away, and the nearest business is 141 feet away, according to our GIS information. And it turns out to be that this is the nearest receptor, is the residential distance. With that in mind, the next item on the screen is whether or not there are any emissions released from vents or openings from a building. And if your equipment is located within a building, then you can give us that information and the building height and everything associated with it. If it's outside, it's probably not the case, and you can move on to the next section, especially since this is a gas station. Now we go on to the CEQA form. The CEQA form is pretty much exactly like the actual physical paper form that you've seen, that you're all familiar with, and hopefully who have submitted these applications, they've done these multiple times. There's 2 sections to the CEQA form. First is a review for exemptions. The first part of it is to, of course, give us a project name and a project description. And then you're supposed to answer these questions as to whether or not you are exempt from CEQA. If you answer yes to any of these questions, you will be exempt from submitting any further information on CEQA. If you answer no to all of them, there'll be a next section of the CEQA that you need to fill out. When we click next, there's a whole list of questions here that I'm not going to go through directly, but I've already pre-filled for you, as all knows. So including the fact as to, will the project include an open outdoor storage or dry bulk solid materials that could generate dust? Yes or no, whatever. So all these questions that have to do with CEQA you have to answer one by one. And as long as you answer no to all of them, then you're good to go. That's all you need as far as CEQA evaluation or CEQA form processes is concerned. We go next, and that completes the main 3 sections that are applicable to every application that we submit at the district. Every application will require a 400A, a 400 PS, and a 400 CEQA form to be submitted. And so this will be similar to all kinds of application. Now we get into the section that has to do specifically with gas station, and that's the 400E11 form. On 400E11 form, the first part is facility information. Asks you about facility or business type, whether it's retail or a government agency. You pick whichever one you want, or a consumer account. And then the maximum operating schedule for your equipment. We usually pre-populate this with like 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, but you can change it, as I've done here, to 24 hours a day for this gas station. You can modify it to whatever your schedule is. This information obviously will be used for emission calculations later too. The next section has to do with storage tanks right now. So I've already added 2 storage tanks to this application. The way you add You can add additional tanks if you need to by clicking add another tank. And the questions that are asked about with the new tank is, will a condensate trap be installed in the vapor return line? You have to say yes or no. And then for that tank, now it tells us what is the status of that tank. The options are new, existing, or removed. Since this is a new facility, obviously we're going to say it's a new tank that we're adding. And then we are asked what kind of information is, information about the tank itself. Is the tank methanol compatible, yes or no? Most tanks are. Will any of these storage tanks be located in a vault below grade? We're going to say no. Most of these are going to be underground. Will the tank at this site contain remote fill? We're going to say no in this case as well. And whether or not semi-rigid piping will be used, and we're going to say no as well. Additional information about the tank is how many compartments does it have? I've seen tanks up to 5 compartments, but usually most of them are 1 compartment. So we're going to select 1, and we're going to add what kind of information that we're dispensing out of that tank. Fuel, could be diesel or gasoline. And then what kind of control mechanism do we use? Well, the control mechanism, we're going to choose fill tight for now. The options are obviously multiple in here. And then the capacity of the tank, and that could be 25,000 gallons that you enter. And once you're done with this information, you add the tank. So I've added 2 before, and this is the 3rd one now. I've had 3 tanks at this facility, at this site, and with that information.
Underground, above ground?
They're all underground right now.
Okay.
All of these are underground tanks. So once you click with this section, you go next. This is where you deal with above ground tanks.
Oh.
First question asks you is, do you have any? So you may or may not have above ground tanks. If you do, you click yes, and the screen opens up, and you have additional information that you need to enter about the tank. Again, this is kind of similar to the underground tanks, whether they're new or existing, and so on and so forth, and the size and all that. But if you don't, we're just going to skip that, and we're going to go to the next section, and that's the nozzle information. One thing I do want to point out, since this just came up right now, these instructions are very specific to every screen. Every screen at the top of every screen has a set of instructions that are specific to that screen and helps you understand what we're asking for, what the information that we're looking for, and how to enter it. However, as some of you pros will be eventually doing this, you don't want to read the instructions. All you have to do is hide it, and it goes away. So that's it becomes second nature to most of you, and you won't have to show that anymore. At the nozzle information, I've already entered my nozzles in here. So let me show you what I've entered. I've entered for my underground tank, I've entered the executive order associated, or the control mechanism associated with my nozzles. There's a whole list of controls that we have entered for you ahead of time that you can pick from. These are the valid executive orders that we use for issuing permits. You want to make sure that you pick the exact executive order that you use, because these are specifically associated with conditions at the back end of your permit, depending on the executive order that you get. So once you...
And the applicant must use one of those authorized executive order.
Correct, correct. Those are CARB executive orders. Though. If you don't have them, then you're not authorized, but you're not allowed by CARB to operate.
Correct.
So
Where can we confirm that?
confirm.
Like, where can we confirm which order is at which station?
Your vendor should know. The vendor installing the equipment.
In fact, if he's not able to tie what he's selling you to an executive order, don't buy any stuff from the vendor.
So are there multiple, I think we're operating just under one, but would you ever operate under multiple? It depends on which.
It's unlikely because the different types of executive orders require training of the personnel.
Right.
And for them to be trained on multiple variations of the same equipment would not be suggested. Okay.
There will be different between underground and above ground, so you'll have different executive orders for that purpose, but most undergrounds will be operated under one executive order. You're also asked to enter your maximum monthly throughput at this gas station. I selected to put 60,000 gallons a month. Probably small, probably large, I don't know, but we'll just deal with that later. And the number of nozzles that you have, that you're going to be installing. In this case, I selected 10 nozzles. So once I click Save, it saves the information, and it gives me the summary here. Additional information on if there wouldn't be any additional nozzles here unless it would have above ground tanks, because it doesn't. There's nothing. We've already done the underground. Above ground will be there if additional one. If you have above ground tanks. Additional information needed is fueling position information. How many fueling positions are available or will be available after the alteration, or if it's a new construction. In this case, we said, well, we have 5 fueling positions. And since this is not an alteration, we're just going to put 0, so there's no prior to the alteration, since this is new equipment. The section about gasoline product information for the underground tanks. We want to know what kind of products do your nozzles dispense. Most products dispense either 1, 2, or 3 products at the same time. And in this case, I selected that all 10 nozzles dispense 3 types of products of gasoline. And then the last piece of information is the dispenser's information. How many do you have? And as part of the instruction, because this is a new construction, we're going to say that we have 5 dispensers. Once you enter all this information, you click Next. And really, that's it. This is all you have to do for the data entry portion. The screen here shows you a summary. The summary gives you everything that we've entered, exactly as we've entered it. And you can review it, make sure that everything is okay and accurate. And if it is, then you're good to go to the next section. If not, and you'd like to modify any of this, you can go directly to, say, the underground tank section here. And then you can modify any of these tanks by clicking on the pencil here. And you can modify the information as you see fit. When you're done, you save it. And it saves for you. You can go to the nozzle information section if need be. Or if you're done, you go to the summary section and you review again and make sure that all of the information that you entered is accurate and correct. Once you're done with that, you go to the next section, which is supplemental documents. For supplemental document purposes, there's nothing necessarily required as far as the gas station application to submit any additional information directly as part of this submittal. However, you are more than welcome to submit any other information that will help us or that will allow us to have information on the gas station, whether it's some documentation on the types of equipment that you have or anything else that you need. The way you do that is by adding additional documents, and you go to, simple enough, choose File. You go into your directory, pick the file that you want to create, open, and then you click Upload. One thing I do want to point out is that these are the only types of documents that you are able to upload directly to us. You're not allowed to upload any executables or any DLLs or anything of the sort. So these are the only types of documents that you're able to upload. Documents, text, Excel files, anything, pictures, all that stuff is good. So as we go through, and obviously, for other types of equipment, you might have a picture that you want to submit, you can do so. The other item that I would like to point out is that you can submit as many files as you need, but the maximum size per file is 10 megabytes. So good enough size, I think, but. So we click upload, and it creates, it automatically takes that file and uploads it to our document management server, and we have it automatically in-house. When you're done, you go next, and here's where the good part comes in, payment. Now we need your payment, of course. We've automatically calculated for you, based on your information, how much it costs to get your permit. It's $1,785.79. There's a summary here that shows your total fees, the fact that your paid amount is, you haven't paid anything yet, and your balance is that amount. So you can click on Make Payment, and by doing so, now we are creating, internally, we are creating an invoice for you that you're gonna pay for as we go through the process. This is our payment portal, which you may or may not have seen before. It's from our online, whenever you make payments as well. You are asked to select what method of payment would you like to use. You can use either credit card or e-check. If you use credit card, you will be charged a convenience fee, not by us, but by our Fiscal Information Services, Federal Information Services. I think FIS? FIS. It's the company that manages our payment processes. We don't keep any of the fees. This is for them to manage and control all this stuff. You can also, however, use an e-check methodology to pay, and if you do, there's no fees associated with it. Actually, there is a minor fee, but we take care of it. We take care of that fee. So in this case, I'm going to select credit card. Go next. This is the invoice that we've created for you that you need to pay for, and you click Checkout, and this will take us into the FIS site to make the payment. You're asked to enter your credit card information. I'll give you that later. Did I do that right? About expiration of the card, what year it expires, identification code, and then, of course, name. Once you've entered that information, this information, by the way, is needed because FIS, after you enter this data, is going to verify that the credit card is valid, that belongs to the address or the person that has entered this information here. And if it doesn't, then it will not allow you to pay online with that. So it will give you an error back that says the credit card is not valid, or it will check whether it's an active credit card, it's valid, all that kind of stuff. They do all that stuff outside. We'll click Continue, and you are asked to read our legalese, terms of payment, and agree to them by checking this box. Click Continue, and this is, again, a summary of what you paid. This is the convenience fee associated with this amount of payment, and all you have to do is process payment. This processes payments against your credit card and actually updates our database as well automatically that the payments were made and the invoice is being cleared. This is a receipt of what you just paid. This will be emailed to you, and I'll show you in just a sec. This will be emailed to you as a receipt that you can have in your files that you make payment. So you can submit that for repayment back purposes. When you click Finish, you go back into our application, And here it shows that now your balance is 0. The application has been paid for, and you're good to move to the next section. I was gonna take you here. So here's the receipt I was telling you about. My email shows that this is the amount that was paid. This is, the credit card that was used and all that kind of stuff, and this is for your information. It is sent automatically to your email. We click next, and now comes the review section, final review. This is the big section of the application. This is where the first part of the application is a lot of data entry, a lot of capturing, but this is where the crux of the application goes through rule evaluation, goes through all kinds of calculations, emissions, and lots of information behind the scene. The first screen shows you your rules that were evaluated, and it shows whether you're in compliance or not. Each one of these sections that apply to the gas stations. For example, Rule 212, it tells you that the emission source is beyond 1,000 feet from the outer boundary of the school, so public notice is not required because there's no school near you. Any other rules you can look at and verify whether you're in compliance with 1401 or not. You're less than 10 million because you have TBAC. So all of these rules are evaluated, and you can review them one at a time if you need to. The other section is emission calculations. Tells you what emission factors you've used to calculate all your emissions. Tells you all your uncontrolled emissions and your controlled emissions, as well as your toxic emissions for benzene, methylbenzene, and naphthalene in this case. So all of this stuff gets calculated and behind the scene, and based on all of this information, we've decided that you passed all the rules and you're good to go with your permit. The next section shows you a preview of your permit, gives you a description of your tanks and your nozzles, and your permit conditions. There's lots of conditions here associated with this, up to 38 conditions associated with your permit. And all of those are part of the process. There's also, for your enjoyment, an evaluation report that you can review if you want to. It's got everything in it, from all background, history, process description, cancer calculations, MICRs, all that kind of stuff. All this stuff here is for, you can browse through it and gives you all the information that you need. And then when you're satisfied, you click next, and now you're ready to submit your application to the district. And because you passed all the rules, you will get a permit online. And I'm going to show you that in just a sec. So here's the first screen. All of this information that we've entered is all in the database at this point, but we need to generate forms or pseudo forms, PDFs, that we store in our document management server. So the way we do that is by generate application. There's an alert here for you that tells you that if this is the last chance that you have to really look at the application, modify any data that you may have entered. If you've made some mistakes, look at it, because beyond this point, you cannot change the data anymore. You cannot modify any data. One of the things I did not talk about earlier on is the fact that, for example, if we were at this junction here of rule evaluation and one of your rules has failed for some reason or another, and we'll still allow you to submit your application to us. It will be submitted. You won't get your permit online, but you will still submit your application, as Lucky said at the beginning of this. You will still submit your application with all of your forms and everything goes with it. In addition to that, if this is if there's an expedited process as well for you to process this application even faster. Of course, you can't get it any faster than submitting this stuff online and getting your permit online. But if you cannot get it online and you want an engineer, we have an expedited fees that goes with it. All you have to do is just go to the payment section, and at the payment section, there's an expedited processing fee section that you can click at this point. Now, it's not available here because it passed all the rules. You can't click it. We're not going to charge you any excess fees or expedited fees. If you pass all the rules, you will get your permit online. But if you, for some reason, you failed your rules, or you have, and an engineer is going to look at the application in-house, then you have the option to submit expedited fees and have the application expedited by the engineering department.
Again, when I emphasize, you don't have to click on it. It's an option that you have.
If you, yeah, exactly.
If you do want to exercise that option is available to you.
Right.
So if you failed,
If you failed the rules,
are
right?
you able to go back in and adjust, say, well, maybe I'll reduce my
Yes.
throughput or something like that?
Definitely, definitely. You can change anything at this point, everything associated with the data that will allow you to, if you, again, if you change your throughput, there'll be a condition on your permit that says that's the throughput that it shows. And based on that throughput, that's what your permit is going to be.
So you submit, and then you find out whether or not you pass or fail. Is that?
No, this
before.
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 This is.
All we are seeing is green here. If you fail, if you happen to fail some of this, they'll be blinking red.
Well, not blinking, but.
Okay, they'll be red.
So you'll.
Okay, so
It'll
you'll either
show
work
why.
on them
It will
and
show
turn
why.
green,
It will show why,
or
exactly.
work with us, and we'll help you out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
With the presumed increased efficiencies that this would create with staff here, when you did, if you failed something and it did have to go to an engineer for approval, would the processing time be reduced than what it is now?
So, it's all in our business model that because we have tremendous interest on seeing this being successful, yeah, we'll give special attention if something.
And I would also say over time,
Yeah.
absolutely, because as we get more digitized with our processes, the engineers will no longer have to deal with all these mounds of paperwork that they're dealing with now. So that amount will decrease over time. So they'll have more time to address these issues as
Just
well.
similar to what Tron said, our long-term goal is, as we free up engineers' time to do this, we'll have more hours to dedicate to other permit processing. So it will have the indirect, efficiency improvement, aspect. But then we are banking on the long term.
But your expedited permits, the expeditious part of it, still depends on, or is subject to voluntary overtime,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I guess to your question, it just depends on what the backlog is as to how long that might take.
What backlog?
The challenge
We
that we
haven't
face
had
is
this meeting where the backlog is.
now that when you,
diminished.
everybody pays the expedited fee.
Right.
So when everybody's paying it, there's really no expediting except for the
Look,
extra fees.
On this one, you are one step ahead because you have gone all the way through the process. You're submitting most of the information text. We need to know the process. If we have all the information that we need, my advice, don't pay the expedited fee. All right, because the engineer should be able to process this, fairly quickly. And if you have our work that simply because we want to make sure this new system is successful, we're going to pay special attention to it. So.
Would public noticing fall
Okay,
outside?
we'll come to that, yeah, we are coming to that. So all this is assuming that your facility that you're trying to get a permit for is not anywhere close to a school. Okay, and so long as your risk is below our 1401 and 1402 thresholds, you are going to be able to print your own permit. And now, I didn't mean to interrupt. You go ahead.
Finish up.
Huh?
Finish up.
Yeah.
Finish up.
So, so we're going to go to the last section, and that's the submission process. As I said, this is where we generate your equipment. Again, click on, you get this alert, and yes, generate. So well, we get some spinning wheels here that generates all these documents, all this information, and automatically, again, uploads them to our document management server. We've got all this information already created and set up. Takes about a few seconds, but it's a lot of data that we've entered and a lot of information gets generated.
And everything takes a little longer now because we're on our stage computer, not in production. And our production system, it's actually a little quicker.
So it's going to create one set of documents that will go to you and a copy that will come to us.
It's done.
And it's already done, yeah.
So after this step, then there is no going back.
That's it.
Correct.
That's it, man. That's it.
So that's it. And
You
so
got your permit.
if there's a mistake, then you're on the hook for additional.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I
no
was-
grace period like on Amazon or something, you've got a few minutes
No
to go
return.
in and.
So
No return
click
concept
continue.
yet.
Okay.
Customer satisfaction, not guaranteed.
Permit generation is absolutely.
So once the document's been generated, then you just click on that.
Continue to submit.
To submit.
And that will take us into that'll take you into our reporting portal where you will be reviewing these documents and agreeing that these documents are accurate, and then you'll be submitting that to us. Again, just a couple of seconds. There you go. So here are the documents that we've generated. This is the 400A form. This is all the data that we've entered or that was previously entered, including everything that you see here, what type of facility, all that kind of stuff. This is the 400 PS form with all the data that we've entered as well. This is the CEQA form with everything that was checked, marked, or unchecked. And then last but not least is the 400E11 form, which is similar to the paper. All of these are similar to the paper forms. They look like it, but they're electronic, obviously, makes it easier, and we don't have to deal with it. So deal with paper. So one of the things that you need to do is to review, make sure that everything is accurate. Hopefully you've done that as we went through, and you just say, okay, yeah, that is the document. I've read the document. And you click, I agree, I've read this document as well. This is per legal requirements. You click, I read this document. The file attachments that we've attached, whatever attachment that you've attached, you can agree that those are, you can view them if you want to click on them and view them, that these are the right files, but you agree on them. And then last but not least is a certification statement. You certify that by signing and submitting this permit, you have read this information, you have, of course, make sure that your password is not compromised and your account is up to date and all that. So you're going to agree to that. Once you agree to all of these, all you have to do is click Submit Report, and you're done. This application will take you back into the OLAF application, and it gives you a message. In the meantime, behind the scene, we're generating the paperwork, we're generating the permit, we're generating everything that goes with it, and here's the summary that says your application has been submitted, and you'll receive an email with confirmation shortly, and all that goes, and everything else. It says if online system rule of action had identified a compliance not verified online, then a permit cannot be issued online. But in this case, everything has been identified as valid in compliance. Now, if I go to my permit, to my email, a number of online application submittal. Here, this is what I just got. I got the 400A. I can download and view it. It's exactly what you saw and we signed off on. It's close this. Oh, right here. where am I? Oh, right here, my email. The 400 PS, again, the same way, you can download it, CEQA, and the 400E11 form. If you download it, again, you can open it and take a look at all the data that you've entered. And this goes into, like I said, into our information management and into our document management system. And then in a couple of seconds, I think, you should be receiving your permit online. Let's see, mine should show up any second. But this is I've done this earlier, and this is what
Once you click on the,
on this permit, this is what you will see. And there's your permit. It'll have the information that you've entered, along with all the conditions, all the way. You can print it, post it, and include lock-in signature as well. So, and that's permit online in a nutshell.
Similar to Amazon Prime, we don't have the 30-day return policy, but the moment you get your permit online in an hour's time, the satisfaction feeling that you get is 10 times greater than the one that you get from Amazon.
Are you gonna have customer feedback right there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you tell us, so what happens? So this was a permit, I mean, the first time it may take some time, but it's not all that onerous. But the moment you go through that experience once, I mean, filling out a second application or third, you know, if you're in that business, it's pretty straightforward. Now, the example that we went through was a gas station that is not close to a school. We don't need any to issue any do any public notification. So you were able to print your permit online. What happens if you are close to a school?
One of the rule evaluation, like for first rule, Rule 212, will say that you're not in compliance with this rule, but you'll still be able, like I said, to submit your application, all of the data that you've entered, and you will get this confirmation email with all those 400 forms that we will get in-house, and the application will be automatically transferred to an engineer.
Yeah.
And then they will be in contact with you to evaluate, look at the rules, process all the applications, process everything.
Yeah.
All the data that we have is automatically at their desktop,
Right.
so they don't have to enter any of it.
Exactly.
So it's
That's why we
pretty
should be able to move forward, you know, fairly quickly. Unfortunately, there's a 30-day delay because of the public noticing and stuff and public commenting. But at the end of the day, by the end of that 30-day period, you know, you should be able to get your permit.
So you have a valid permit subject to
to the public. Exactly.
And that was, I
No.
guess.
You don't have a permit yet, you know, so.
It has to go through public notice before it becomes a valid permit.
But all the paperwork was accepted,
Yes,
right?
it's kind of like you're submitting an application, yeah.
Submitted,
Yeah,
okay.
Essentially, rather than submitting your permit forms, your paper permit forms, like most people do till now, you have submitted everything electronically to us.
So everything is in suspense, really.
Everything is suspense, but all the calculations and everything, the engineer won't have to do any calculations under that scenario. Everything, you know, has been done by the computer. All that is remaining to be done is to do the 30-day public noticing, you know, and wait for comments if we receive any. And assuming everything goes through smoothly, then we should be able to print that permit for you and send it to you. Another scenario could be, depending on your distance to the sensitive receptor, we calculate risks, and we have to be below our 1401 thresholds. Typically, you know, not typically, you're going to have a throughput limitation that assures that you're staying below those thresholds. And the program uses the tier 2 type of analysis for 1401 purposes, for risk analysis, which is a crude, quantification technique, but it's a, relatively speaking, very straightforward analysis that we use, and that you can use also through your perfect forms. Now, if for whatever reason the risk is above certain level or the throughput, and we need to modify those, we have the ability to use tier 4 type of analysis, which is a little more sophisticated and a little more forgiving. But to do that, you'll have to work with an engineer. So that information electronically will have to come to us, and by working with the engineer, you'll be able to alter some of those permit conditions.
When you're talking about risk, is there any thought process as far as 617 nuances? If you have a facility in that area, how it might be dealt with differently?
We'll see how the program evolves. I mean, for the time being, there is no 617 overlay on this one. And frankly, I don't think anyone's crystal ball is that clear to figure out what will happen 2, 3, 4 years down the road as part of the 617. If we need to adjust the program based on that decision making, we'll adjust it. And just like any other rule amendment, if we are amending the rule and changing some of the facts on the ground, we'll have to go back to the programming and reflect those improvements there. Which, by the way, is one of the Achilles heel of the online tools, because they're fairly rigid. I mean, they're designed to comply with the existing rules and regulations. The moment you slightly tweak the rule and regulations, you may have to go back and start tweaking, the programming, which is not the easiest thing. It's not impossible, but it's not the easiest thing.
Is there going to be a process whenever there's a new rule that you would audit your programming?
Well, all of us will have, whether you're on the regulatory side or on the regulated side, we'll have to be very strategic on what we ask, how we ask it, because unless it's a substantive change and we've already developed a tool, that will throw the tool off, my suggestion would be, just stick to what we have. Unless, of course, the amendment is something of crucial importance.
You've got about a dozen rules coming up now, don't you? 212.
Yes.
Noticing and fees and everything coming up.
Yeah, but there is, I don't see any impact yet on this. We are also, Billy,
The program does have some flexibility. You notice that there's a drop-down list for all the CARB approvals. That's a table-driven item, so that they can just add new approvals in when they're done. That's not a big deal. I think what Lucky's mentioning is that there's a rule that, maybe 617 says that in an EJ community, there's a risk of 10 in a million is no longer acceptable. Right. So that would require a major change.
Right. We'll cross that bridge, if, we get to that point.
So on 1401, there was an issue last year where AQMD kind of diverged from CARB on the gasoline station refueling factor for onboard vapor recovery.
Yes.
And I think CARB, I don't know if they've made their decision yet or not.
They're on the cusp.
So when they do, and if they don't agree what they, like you guys incorporated in 1401, there was a commitment to go back and I think.
Right. So the latest conversation that I had with they understand that we'll probably end up agreeing to disagree, on this one factor. We are agreeing on most other factors, but on one, our position is they are double counting. What they want to do is give us the ability to use our own factor, and they're going to be committing between now and the next 2-3 years to do some additional testing to verify their theory. That particular factor, by the way, is not going to impact the vast majority of the stations that we have But if you are a super high throughput station, I don't want to name names. It's not an advertisement. But if you're at ultra high throughput facilities, some of those big stores, you know, that we are all love to go and shop in. And if you happen to be close, you know, to a residential community, it may impact you. But like I said, this is not the 99% of the universe, but probably the top 1%.
You guys are supposed to promise that you were going to resolve your differences last Christmas, so I guess you're only a year.
Yeah, well, we gave them everything, you know, and I think everybody at CARB, they are trying to do their best to gear up towards the 617 implementation and the greenhouse gas implementation, and some of the criteria pollutant regulations perhaps are taking second priority compared to those other higher priority projects. But we have their word, their commitment, and I think they're coming out with this very shortly, that they'll be doing some additional testing. Because basically what we had told them was, look, we would love to be able to update that particular emission factor, but nobody has any actual test information that we can quantify the benefit of that control and come up with a revised emission factor. And we cannot just pull the factor out of thin air.
So ARB is pulling it out of thin air?
I didn't say that, you know, but
And
I say,
all
you know,
the other
we are
districts.
very fact-based, you know. There are districts, you know, who do agree with us. For them, it's not as big of an issue because they have a lot fewer stations compared to us. But in our case, just to give you an example, what that translates to in terms of actual emissions is close to 1 ton a day of emissions in the inventory.
Well,
Because it's a small, very small figure on a per station basis. You multiply it by 3,000, 4,000 stations, you end up with a ton and a half. I can't remember what the number was. So we cannot ignore it.
Well, I was trying to remember, I went back and looked up the board resolution from last September when 1401 was updated. And it said, because there was a lot of discussion then, and at that point, what the board said, they directed staff that within 30 days of CARB finalizing, go back to stationary source and then come back as quickly as possible to the board with revisions to update the AQMD risk assessment procedures to reflect the emission factor revisions from CARB. So, I mean, to me, that sounds like, I think the expectation was when CARB decided, then the board directed y'all to adopt those CARB revisions, whatever they are. Does that kind of ring? I can forward
but that's okay. We can look at it.
Okay.
I mean, we are digressing a little. We had extensive conversations with CARB. They understand where we are coming from. They want to help us. They want to look into it. They just can't do it right away.
I guess just to second what Susan said, during that rulemaking process, there was extensive conversations with staff and then at stationary source, which I know both was part of the process as well, that led to that resolution. So if staff could take a second look at it, because I know.
We can.
Yeah.
We can. And I think, we don't want to digress, you
Of
know,
course.
from this.
But it's kind of integral.
It's an ongoing issue and it'll come back, I mean, once that does happen with CARB.
I'm not worried. I'm still waiting for staff to complete 2 outstanding issues on Rule 1147 here. And that's 2 years old. So
Well, it's coming up again next year.
1401.
Right, of course. I guess one question I had regarding the online permitting tool, which I thought a lot of it was wonderful. With the mapping portion, I didn't really notice. Obviously, the location and the PIN location is going to be critical for some of the things we're talking about with 1401 and the risk calculation.
Yes.
Does it actually show your GPS location as far as latitude and longitude when you
It
do
doesn't
that?
show you, but it does calculate it in the back end.
It does calculate, will you be able to see that once it does calculate it, so you know what it is and make sure it's accurate?
Yeah, no, I'm not on the application.
Okay,
We
'cause
don't
I mean,
have it showing
it's
right
very
now.
easy now to be able to know what your location is, even
Right.
like on your phone, so that might be helpful.
There's a difference. We calculate, initially, we calculate your GPS coordinate based on the address. So
Okay.
wherever the address is, that's where we initially put the pin.
Mhm.
However, that's not necessarily where your equipment
is,
location
right.
is, so that's why we asked
So I
you to
guess that's
move.
why I'm asking, because, yeah, you need, since it's so critical to know exactly where your equipment is and be able to put that pin in the correct location, that may be
Right.
helpful to try to
So
be able to know.
we'll consider that as an enhancement, a
Okay.
future enhancement.
I think actually the pin placement does show you the lat long, but there's no direct input.
Okay.
So if you know it, it's a matter of, searching around for it to
Yeah.
match your, iPhone GPS or whatever it
Okay.
is. So that might be a little bit awkward. It might be better just to have a picture of it, know where your pumps are, and
Mhm.
drop the pin right there.
Okay. I guess maybe, yeah, you said to
Well, we'll
consider
we'll
for the
consider
future,
it,
just
yeah.
to make it a little bit easier, make sure it's
And
accurate.
the data is there, it's just a matter of displaying it, but I don't think we have a direct input on that.
Okay.
So
Is
if
that
you have,
something that you'd be interested in seeing?
In the future, yeah, because it would just be easier, because it's so easy now to find,
Yeah, I
where
mean,
your equipment is, know
it's,
the
Yeah,
exact
see, we're
lat
so
long,
old, so
and then
we're
you,
not, up on this, newest
right.
phone technology.
I'm gonna disagree. We're gonna look into enhancing it, obviously our we love what we've done.
Right, no,
I think
a
it's a
lot of
great-
it's fantastic.
Yeah, and so that all being said, we also look every day to see how we can improve it, how we can make it better.
Yeah.
And so we're going to, like I said, we're gonna take your recommendations into consideration and see if that's something
Yeah,
that
because that's
maybe
one
a
thing I
future
saw that could
enhancement.
probably make it easier.
so if you have a large facility like a Sam's Club or a Costco, you could be talking
Oh, hundreds of feet.
hundred
Right.
feet.
Yeah.
So do
Exactly.
you make the
It can make a
adjustment then
huge-
here?
No, they'll have to
Well, I mean,
tell
that's,
us.
that's the thing, if it's issued online, it's done. Now,
Which
you
might
might
make a big
face
difference.
compliance issues later on if it comes out that the compliance person goes out and says, hey, I looked at your application and I don't know why, but your PIN is in, Juarez, Mexico. And that's how you got around notifying the school. So that could be, and that becomes a compliance issue, and we've discussed ways to bind or bound the PIN placement. So we just,
Well, I wasn't thinking about out of state, I was thinking from the mail address,
Yes.
whatever that
Yes.
is, to the physical pump.
Right.
Like you say, a few hundred
Yeah.
feet.
Right, it makes a big difference. That's why we're saying, hey, where you place that pen is very critical. And what can happen is obviously the placement of the pen has to reflect the reality. So if they're in compliance and they're not running afoul, with any of our enforcement staff. But hypothetically speaking, let's assume, they place the pin correctly, and which happens to be, next to some sensitive reserve or close enough, and the risk, is above our thresholds. Because those facilities are a sizable, size, you could, hypothetically speaking, move the location of your station, 50 to 100 feet or yards, to the other corner, to the other end of the lot, and perhaps you can alleviate, your risk issues, It can happen, because 50 to 100 feet makes a huge difference, in those risk calculations. So that could be something that we can not negotiate, but we can perhaps, through the information exchange between us and the future Costco's or Sam's Clubs, to advise them, or the program can advise them, hey, you may be better off, moving this station to the other, or to the northeast corner from the northwest corner, of your facility, and you'll be golden.
Good question.
Yes.
Is my understanding that now whenever we submit documentation without a throughput max, there's gonna be one implemented at the station?
Yes.
Was that included in here? So
Yes.
if we.
I may have missed it, but yeah, it is.
Well, because I was here the first time that we did this, I know this is the encore presentation like you mentioned, but you had, I think we had touched on it a little bit more, but now I've actually been confronted with that myself at some of our stations. And so instead of going back and forth with your team to let me know what passes the threshold requirement, and that's now like embedded within that step of the rule. So
It's a
if I
requirement.
put in the level, you'll say too high, and then I'll just keep minimizing it until it says passes or
You can do
Yeah.
that.
approve.
I mean, that's kind of the advantage to having this iterative process.
Right,
You've committed by paying,
right.
but you can go back and adjust if you didn't pass the first time. So you go back and you put in a new throughput, everything's all green, or it's still red, you lower the throughput and get to where you need to
And
be.
that's as simple as it is, it's just entering another digit to
Right.
get it down. Okay, and then also another question on the gross receipt input field. Is there ever gonna be an issue where we're not gonna have gross receipts, where, for example, we're just taking over a station, we don't have sales, and we're trying to do new construction, or it's a brand new build, right? Can we do an estimated gross receipts, or
You
is that
definitely,
a mandatory field?
you definitely can. Like I said, you can put either the actual gross receipt if you know them, or you can put something of an estimate, or if you don't know at all, you can put zeros. If you put
It's not a
zeros,
mandatory field, or we would have to put
you
zero.
have to put a zero. It will flag you if you don't put a number in there. You have
But
to
it
put a
is
zero.
biased to a large facility, so if you
Yeah.
put in 00, it's gonna classify you as a large facility and won't give you the small business discount.
Okay. And that's all you do with that gross receipts is just determine whether or not there's a
Yep.
small business discount?
Correct.
And that's determined based on gross receipts for that one store, not overall of the entity, or
Right.
it's just
Correct.
gross receipts at that location?
That location.
Okay.
And is that public information?
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
on the 400A is
Absolutely.
public information.
And Bill, is that 500,000?
Yeah,
500,000.
Our small
Seems
business
like you
definition
might
is
wanna-
very, it almost should be
You've
labeled
got
as
3 of them,
a
I think.
tiny business
Micro.
designation, yeah.
Micro.
Because it's,
Yeah.
what, 10 employees and $500,000?
Get half a million.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and that's growth,
For,
that's not net,
But that's just not, that's this field, right, gross?
yeah.
Correct.
yeah.
Gross receipts,
For the gas stations, they may be out of luck because with the throughput,
yeah.
basically with a 125,000 throughput, you'll be exceeding that gross receipt
Right.
figure anyhow. And
Annually.
most stations are way above that anyhow. Not even counting their mini markets, so, yeah. But on the other hand, if you are an auto body spray booth, or a dry cleaner, you may be able to take advantage of that, Auto body spray booths, or dry
Yeah,
cleaners
mostly dry
can
cleaners.
stay well below that gross receipt figure.
And then is this set up yet to do change of ownership applications if nothing's changing, no permit conditions are changing, it's just a straight entity ownership change?
Unfortunately, not yet.
Not yet,
That's-
okay.
That's coming up next.
Future enhancement.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So that's all we had, and we would invite you or your constituents, to use the tool and
Comments.
this gentleman, came a little late. What we started saying to the team, this is on a limited production mode, which means you can use it with our assistance, and we're going to make ourselves available 100% of the time, at least for the first, I don't know how many months. So we'll invite you over, we can make an appointment. You can bring your own computer, we can bring our own computer, bring your data, you'll insert them, we'll sit next to you, we'll make sure you get your permit, assuming that you're not close to the school. And we want to learn from your experience, to see, what the interaction there is and whether we can come back, and improve certain things. And I think the first few times that we tried that, actually we get some valuable feedback. And hopefully after the initial trial of, I don't know how many months, once we feel, very comfortable with it, we are going to put it on the public domain and you're going to be on your own. You can do it from the leisure of your home or of your office and insert your data there with our assistance. So that's about it, yes.
So just 2 things. First, I'd like to thank my staff for developing this application and presenting it. They've done an amazing job. And then lastly, I'd just like to shamelessly plug our new mobile app.
We do. Yeah, please do.
So we developed a brand new SCAQMD app for the iPhone. The Android version will be coming out in about 6 months. So if you go to the App Store, just put in SCAQMD, download it, you'll get AQI, you'll get weather, you'll get conditions, you'll also get a map where you can charge your vehicle or put fuel in, and all your events for SCAQMD as well. So we're trying to put everything into this app. I would appreciate if you can download it and use it.
Can I increase my throughput with it?
Check the GPS. Just to continue that plug.
Yes.
This online application is designed for use on the phone and a tablet as well, so.
That's right. So yeah, so eventually, like I said, we want to get everything through here. And it's good not just for the iPhone, it's good for the for the iPad and also the Apple Watch. And then Android will be in about 6 months.
It's a very good application, strongly recommended. Any questions that you guys may have before we close? We are excited, okay? We are excited. Like I said, we want to make sure this thing becomes successful, and that will give us the power to keep going, and adding additional processes. In fact, we have 4 additional equipment that we are working on under Rule 222. So we want to automate that entire process altogether, make it all electronic based. And the 4 equipment that we are working on, I can't remember all of them, but they do include oil wells, well cellars, I should say, cooling towers, negative air machines, and I can't remember. Char boilers.
So and boilers.
Yeah. So they are they are coming out in the next few months, So and they are covering thousands of equipment that we are registering with us. So it will be a milestone, in terms of how we go about it and doing business,
The simple folks are going to be interested in that.
Yeah.
Oil wells.
Yeah. So, exactly. So, I don't know, we are excited.
A lot of people will be
that'll be very helpful.
And ultimately, like I said, even for the rest of the processes that we are relying currently, on paper forms, we at least want to move to electronic application submittal process rather than relying on paper forms. We may not have the automatic, permit generation tools yet for a refinery, for instance, but at least at a minimum, we'd like to give them the opportunity to submit everything electronically.
Yeah.
Are you getting activity from dry cleaners and pig booths through this new system?
Some, yeah. There's still a little, and we are relying on your assistance as well, keep spreading the word. And like I said, we have people available to help them out. It may be intimidating perhaps initially, but staff is ready to assist, and make sure they get things online. Okay. Bill, what? Yeah, okay.
I'm just thinking I'm already up to 1,600 pages on my paper with the app, so.
1,600. Ron is ready to, to handle it. No problem. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Please help us spread the word and encourage. We wish to have some takers and to sit down with and get some permits online.
Thank you for the encore presentation.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
You ask, you get. Folks.
Thank you.
Other than the admission factor.
Well,
Glad to have you here.
we'll keep at it.
Oh.